Deep in the heart of the forest, a cry broke the silence. It wasn't the roar of a beast or the call of prey. It was the desperate howl of a tiny puppy, abandoned and left to die. Alone, tangled in thorns, its weak body trembled with pain, each sound a plea for help. But then, footsteps approached. A hunter, rifle in hand, paused. Everyone expected the story to end in tragedy, but what he did next stunned the world. This wasn't a hunt anymore. It was the beginning of something no one could have imagined. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The forest stood in eerie silence, its towering trees whispering with the evening wind. Sunlight had long faded, leaving behind a blanket of shadows that crept across the ground. Among the rustling leaves and distant calls of owls, a different sound rose, a faint, trembling cry. It was not the howl of a wolf nor the growl of a predator. It was fragile, desperate, and heartbreakingly weak. Somewhere deep in the thicket, a tiny life was crying out, clinging to hope. The cry echoed again, sharper this time, slicing through the stillness of the woods. It carried pain, fear, and loneliness all at once, as if begging the universe for mercy. Birds startled from branches, scattering at the sound. Yet no one was there to listen, no one but the forest itself. This was not a place where help came easily. For an abandoned creature, survival was nearly impossible. But fate has strange ways of writing stories. On this night, those fragile howls would not go unheard. What seemed like the last cry of a forgotten life was about to draw someone closer, someone who was the least likely to answer, and yet the only one who could. The forest path crunched under heavy boots as a man walked steadily, his rifle slung over his shoulder. His face was weathered, marked by years of solitude and countless hunts. To many, he was just the hunter, a man of few words, whose life revolved around tracking prey and surviving the wilderness. But that night, as he paused to light his lantern, something unusual stirred in the distance. A faint sound, a cry. It was no ordinary animal's call. At first, he frowned, assuming it to be the whimper of a wounded fox or a trapped hare. But as the sound carried again, trembling and raw, his steps slowed. The tone was too sharp, too full of pain, to belong to the wild. He adjusted his grip on the lantern and turned off the path, letting instinct guide him deeper into the undergrowth. Each cry grew louder, pulling him toward the unknown. Branches scratched his arms. The thick scent of damp earth filled the air, yet he pressed forward. Finally, he stopped, his lantern's light catching something small beneath the shadow of an old oak. His sharp eyes narrowed, not at a fox or rabbit, but at a tiny, shivering puppy. Its fur was matted, its eyes wet with tears, and its cry broke through the hunter's hardened heart. The hunter lowered his lantern closer, and the glow revealed more than he expected. The puppy wasn't simply lost, it was hurt. A deep cut ran along its tiny paw, fresh enough to sting but old enough to show it had been suffering for days. The man's chest tightened, a strange heaviness settling over him. He had spent his life pulling the trigger without hesitation, yet now, in front of this trembling creature, his hands shook. He crouched, his rough palms reaching out with surprising gentleness. The puppy recoiled, whimpering, its fragile body pressing into the cold earth as if bracing for more pain. That small act pierced the hunter's soul. This wasn't the fear of the wild, it was the fear of betrayal. Someone had left this creature to die. He could see it in the way the pup trembled at every movement. A growl rose in his throat, not at the puppy but at the faceless cruelty that abandoned it. The forest, which once felt like his hunting ground, now felt like a graveyard. He carefully lifted the pup, tucking it inside his worn coat. For the first time in years, his mission wasn't about survival or prey, it was about protection. And though he didn't yet realize it, this moment would change his life forever. Back at his small cabin, the hunter placed the trembling puppy near the fire. The flickering flames painted soft shadows across the walls, and for the first time, warmth touched the pup's fragile body. It curled into the blanket he laid down, whimpering softly, still unsure if this strange man was a savior or another danger. The hunter sat close by, silent, his rifle leaning forgotten in the corner. That night, he couldn't sleep. Each cry from the pup stirred something buried deep in his heart. Memories of loneliness, of a life spent chasing survival instead of companionship. When the pup's whimpers grew louder, he gently reached out, stroking its fur with calloused fingers. Slowly, the trembling eased, and the puppy pressed its tiny head into his palm. That single gesture was more powerful than any words. Days turned into a rhythm neither of them expected. The hunter cleaned the wound daily, carefully wrapping it with strips of cloth torn from his own shirt. The pup, once silent and afraid, began to trust, its eyes following him around the cabin, its ears perking at the sound of his voice. The hunter found himself speaking aloud again, not to the forest, not to the silence, but to a living soul that actually listened. Weeks passed, and the forest seemed different with the puppy by his side. Where once silence ruled, now soft barks and playful growls filled the air. The hunter, once a man of solitude, found himself smiling as the pup clumsily chased after fallen leaves. But the true test came one stormy evening when thunder rolled across the skies. The frightened puppy darted under the table, its body shaking violently. The hunter knelt, his deep voice steady, whispering reassurances until the pup crawled into his arms. That night, as lightning split the sky, the man realized the bond had become unbreakable. Word of the hunter's new companion spread quickly through the nearby village. Neighbors who once feared his stern presence now watched in awe as he walked through the market with a puppy trotting faithfully beside him. Whispers turned into smiles, the hunter with a dog, as if his hardened image had been rewritten overnight. Children approached shyly, reaching out to pet the pup, and the hunter, who had never been known for kindness, allowed it, surprising even himself. The puppy's once wounded paw had healed, but something greater had changed. It had not only found safety, but had also transformed the man who saved it. The hunter's life, once defined by survival, was now marked by companionship and trust. Seasons passed, and the man once known only as the hunter was no longer seen walking alone. By his side trotted the same puppy he had found bleeding in the forest, now strong, loyal, and full of life. Villagers watched in awe as the bond between them grew deeper with each passing day. What had begun as an act of compassion had become a transformation that no one could ignore. The hunter, who once carried nothing but his rifle, now carried treats in his pockets and pride in his stride. The puppy followed him faithfully into the woods, not as prey or possession, but as family. Children who once feared his stern face now ran to greet the pup, and for the first time, the hunter smiled back. The coldness that had surrounded him for years had melted, replaced by warmth no one expected. And when asked why he had chosen to save that fragile life in the forest, the hunter's voice always softened. "I didn't just rescue him," he admitted. "He rescued me." Those words silenced doubters, proving a simple truth. Sometimes, the smallest cries can awaken the largest hearts. The story of a forgotten puppy had forever changed the life of a man and inspired an entire village.